Day one of the NATO summit in Chicago marked by mass demonstrations that resulted in fierce clashes with police. A dozen reportedly injured and about 60 arrested after officers started using batons to disperse thousand-strong crowds. RT's Anastasia Churkina was there in the middle of what became the rally, the biggest rally in a week of anti-war protests, and brings us the details.
Today certainly was unprecedented for a week of action taking place here in Chicago along the sidelines of the NATO summit. What we witnessed was a march that lasted a few hours that was overall peaceful, that ended with violent clashes between riot police and anti-war protesters. Hundreds of police clashed with hundreds of outraged protesters. There were batons being swung by police, plastic bottles being thrown by protesters, paint balloons being thrown, violence. At least 12 people, from what we know, have been injured, at least 60 people arrested. There were several warnings from police coming that they might have to use chemical on the protesters unless they dispersed. That had not been the case, but violent clashes, bleeding faces, a lot of chaos. About 100 protesters were really involved in the action, whereas the majority of the ones marching were able to disperse before violence kick-started here on the ground.
Co-director of the Anti-War International Action Center, Sara Flounders, is in Chicago, and she thinks the action taken against demonstrators shows NATO feels threatened by their cause.
The very fact that so many thousands of people came out from all across the country, and the one message that the police and NATO has tried to make is to blame all violence. Here is this war machine responsible for violence around the world, from drone attacks to bombings to attacks at war in Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, threats on Iran, and yet they're calling the demonstrators violent. They have spent weeks and weeks and weeks saturating the media here with wild, completely inaccurate, fabricated stories about how the demonstrators are violent. They actually have charged young people with terrorism charges, $1.5 million bail. They've kidnapped people right off the streets that the lawyers spent days trying to find. They would not have done that if they did not feel enormously threatened that right here in the U.S., there is a denunciation of NATO, of its wars, a demanding that the troops be brought home from Afghanistan, that there be no new wars, and the end to this skyrocketing military spending while every social program here is cut. They wouldn't be doing any of this if they didn't feel threatened.